Hello and welcome to Wild Earth Ways. I'm Kat, and in today's video we're going to be playing with different decks with a kind of autumn mood, so getting into the change of seasons and ready for the autumn. I don't know how the weather is where you are, but for us it's still pretty hot, but we do still feel the change in the season, so the days are getting a little shorter. The kids have gone back to school, we have some birds migrating and some autumn flowers blooming. And even if autumn does stay pretty warm here, we do start to think a little bit about changing clothes for the new season, and changing decks is kind of similar to that. I feel like through the summer I was using a lot of floral imagery, so I was working with a couple of flower-based decks, which I talked about in a previous video, and now I'm starting to think about switching it out for more autumn moods. So the way I normally have my tarot practice, there'll be a deck which I'm focusing on, like a study deck, through the month, and then alongside that I'll just play with other decks as the mood takes me. And currently, obviously, that's a little bit fall inspired, so these are the decks which I've pulled out for that. I don't always pair my decks. I often would read just with a single deck, but I thought it would be fun to see which oracle decks can join up with my tarot decks to get into that autumny mood. So the first pair I want to talk about is the Heartwood Tarot by Stephanie Burrows and Adam Ohlers, and the Forest Fae Oracle by Nadia Turner. So we can see right away from the backs of the Heartwood Tarot that they are very autumny in mood. We have all these fallen leaves in the imagery, and the colour scheme in the deck is very autumnal. And there is a kind of mood of decay and falling away as well in this deck, and looking for a place of shelter. Now, generally, when I've been reading with the Heartwood Tarot, I've been combining it with the Thistledown Oracle, but I want to try something different for this video and share a different pair. And that is the Forest Fae. So I think that these decks go together really, really well, both in the kind of the colour scheme and the mood, and also the messages which are coming through and the concept. In the cottage in the Heartwood Tarot, we see a place which is inhabited by lots of different animals and something more as well. And the kind of the creatures in the Forest Fae Oracle deck maybe fill in a little bit the blanks in the story in this deck. Let's take a look. So here we have the Five of Wands with the Spirit, Familiar, and the Nine of Cups. And here we have the Four of Cups with the Thimble Witch, who says there is magic in beginnings, so start something new, and the Lovers, which is quite a nice pairing because we see this wolf looking mournfully into these cups. And then our Thimble Witch is telling us to look somewhere new as the mouse looks through the bottle, perhaps to see a mouse on the other side or his reflection. I'm pretty sure that's actually his reflection in there. We have the Page of Swords, the Gnome of Mushrooms and Buttons, the Three of Pentacles. So in these two cards we have more of a nighttime coloration. So they harmonise together quite nicely, a little differently from the Oracle deck though. Here we have the High Priestess with the Lady of the Lost, and Surprise, an extra card in this deck. And this is kind of what I mean by the characters filling in the sort of missing pieces of the deck, because we can see that the cottage is somewhat inhabited. The pomegranates, for example, they don't look super fresh, but neither have they completely decayed. So there is some kind of inhabitation taking place in the cottage. And I can certainly imagine these characters in the Forest Fae coexisting with these characters in the Heartwood. Usually with the Forest Fae, this is a deck I tend to draw on its own and not with other decks. But I do think it goes well with these ones. So we have the Queen of Wands with the Fairy, Harper, and the Knight of Pentacles. And she advises us to find the words to long forgotten songs and dance to the music in your soul, which could be advice from the Queen of Wands to the Knight of Pentacles, perhaps. And here we have the Nine of Wands with this rather battered looking bat. And Owl Song, whisper secrets to the moonlight and find strength in stillness. And then the Four of Swords, which goes together quite beautifully, I think, with here this exhaustion after battle and this kind of nighttime vibe through all of the cards and the kind of orbs of light that we see. And then the Four of Swords, we have this moment of rest and recovery. So I think that this deck is a nice alternative to using the Thistledown as an oracle with this deck. And it's kind of fun to see the different aspects of the deck which it brings out. So meanwhile, the Thistledown, which I do think is a lovely deck for the autumn, I'm going to try pairing with a different tarot this time around. So I'm going to try pairing it with the John Bower Tarot, which is, I feel, a very autumny mood deck. Let's take a look. Actually, quite a few of the images in the John Bower Tarot are quite wintry, but nevertheless it has a kind of autumny mood for me, I think partially because of the colour of the green borders and those sort of red backs as well, and also because it's a fairy tale world, and so for me that has certain connotations of autumn as you start to kind of want to come indoors and read a story instead of maybe being outside quite as much. So here we have the Three of Pentacles with guardedness and the Three of Cups. I actually find the John Bower Tarot quite challenging to read as a tarot deck. This is a fairly straightforward, I think, Three of Pentacles. You can see the sort of Rider-Waite imagery there. Less so in the Three of Cups, which shows a journey of some kind taking place. So here we have the Ten of Wands with celebration and the Strength card. I think this is a gorgeous Strength card. And you can see the autumny colours. And also with our Ten of Wands here, kind of a strange image for the Ten of Wands. This usually connected with sort of burden and overwhelm, although there certainly is a lot happening in the image. Here we have a beautiful Queen of Swords looking at the flying swans, intrigue, and the Five of Swords, which is quite a evocative combination. It certainly feels like the beginning of a story, or perhaps the middle of a story, as we're about to find out some crucial piece of information. Here we have our Five of Wands, Pause, and the Page of Wands. I have seen, I think, Dawn Michelle cut the borders off her Bower Tarot, and it made a really lovely oracle deck. I'm afraid I'm not quite brave enough to do that, so it stays a tarot deck for me. And here we have our King of Cups with moving forward and the Page of Cups. So here our King of Cups does seem to be going in the wrong direction and needs to pay attention to what's happening over here in this direction. Perhaps she's trying to tell him that. So while I have used the Thistledown oracle a fair bit recently, the John Bower not so much, and I do have plans to get this deck out over the coming autumn and winter. Now the next pair I have is a little different. I have the Soul Trees Ascension deck and Carol Hertz's Illuminated Tarot. They go really well together, but some people might think that's not very autumnal. Let's take a look and I'll talk a little bit about why, for me, this does have an autumn mood. Okay, so here's our Illuminated Tarot with the Soul Trees Ascension deck between. And you can see that the colours are very vibrant in these decks. They go together really well. This is a deck which I have previously talked about not connecting so well with, and I've recently been using it more and more and finding it to be a really helpful reader, especially in combination with the tarot. So you can see in these cards a lot of pinks and blues, and so for some people this may speak to them of summer. But for me, this actually feels kind of autumnal, that moment at which the summer is moving over, it's reached its full peak and is starting to tip over into autumn. So in fact here the trees don't really lose their leaves, so we have that kind of green all year round, or rather in the summer it actually gets rather yellow, and then the green returns with the rain. So here we have the Two of Wands with Discover and the Nine of Cups. Quite an encouraging combination. Here's our Queen of Wands with Community and the King of Cups, so maybe they're making community together. And for sure you could read these colours as very summery, especially with her sunflower. But again, for me, I do also see these colours around me in the autumn. Here we have the Nine of Swords with Come Together and the Page of Pentacles. So hopefully moving from this very anxious, fearful card towards some optimism and possibility as we come together through the central card. And I do think that the colours are particularly beautiful in this deck. It tends to remind me of especially like this card, of that time late in the afternoon when the sun has gotten low and the light on everything is very golden. Here's our Two of Swords with Duality and the Sun card. This is a spectacular card, I think. The light coming off of the swords and from that kind of eclipse is just stunning and harmonizing quite nicely with the Duality card and utterly transformed in this Sun card. Isn't that gorgeous? We have our Seven of Pentacles with Grounded and a spectacular Ten of Cups here. There's a certain kind of fullness to these cards which really makes me feel that kind of very end of summer feeling. Maybe it doesn't work for you as a autumn pair, but I do think these two decks do pair beautifully together. I think I first had the idea of pairing them together from a comment in one of my videos, so I'm afraid I don't remember who left that comment, but thank you for the suggestion. I do think that they work so well together. So for a very different mood, I thought we could try the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot with the Terra Oracle deck. So here are our backs, quite autumny, I think, with the sort of greens and golds moving through these cards. Let's take a look at the images. This is the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot. Pagan Otherworlds could be used in any season. It could be seen as a spring deck. I think I've heard people using it as a spring deck because it has a lot of space and kind of clarity to the light. And similarly, Terra really isn't connected to any particular season. But let's take a look at how it works together with the Pagan Otherworlds. So here we have the Nine of Cups with the Orb Weaver standing for imagination and the Ace of Swords. I like the idea of taking all this possibility and fullness through the process of imagination into this new idea in the Ace of Swords. And I do think that the deck can work as a autumnal deck because of the colouring, this kind of creamy taupe colouring around the borders. So here we have our Fool with the Bengal tiger, who stands for vitality, and the star. And I love how the Fool is kind of looking towards and moving towards the star, though it's perhaps not going to be straightforward to reach her since he is on this cliff. He's going to need to get across this water. And with this tiger in between, there appear to be some challenges to overcome. So next we see the Sun with the tardigrade and the Page of Cups. I love that there's a tardigrade in this deck. I think that's really nice. And of course he stands for resiliency. And once again, we do sort of see the characters interacting with each other across the bridge of the animal between them. I mean, this is very autumnal, isn't it? I find this to be an autumnal image. Here we have the Devil card, quite a creepy one in this deck, with the Three-Toed Sloth, who is recuperation, and the Eight of Pentacles. I think we are certainly in need of some recuperation in this position. Here we have our Nine of Swords with the Stink Bug, who stands for resistance. Perhaps a suggestion that we need to grasp hold of the swords and resist. Or alternatively that we're putting up too much resistance. Okay, so I do feel a kind of autumnal energy, certainly in the Pagan Otherworlds, and I do enjoy having the Terra alongside it to bring in a little bit of animal energy as well. I think they speak to each other quite nicely. So the next pair I want to try out is the Tarot of Japanese Poetry with the Treekeepers Oracle. Now the Tarot of Japanese Poetry includes all of the seasons. It turns the suits into seasons explicitly, and yet I do feel a kind of autumnal vibe because of the overall colour scheme being this kind of parchment colour throughout the deck. So here they are together. We have the Keeper of Surrender from the Treekeepers Oracle, and between the Knave of Spring and the Emperor. And I think you can see a little bit what I mean by saying that the cards have an autumnal vibe. So even while this is spring and we can see the blossom, it has a kind of brownish colour scheme. I like how in this Emperor card, the Emperor has his back to us, and we can see this small child meeting with him. I haven't seen that kind of depiction in an Emperor card often. I think it brings a different feeling to the card, and actually it goes very nicely with our two previous cards as well, as the spring is coming to meet the Emperor. And there's a kind of sense of surrender in the sense of approaching someone more powerful than yourself. Here we have the Knight of Spring with the Keeper of Solitude and the Magician. This is a really storytelling vibe. I do feel like we're being taken into a story in these cards, like how we have our knight and horse reappearing here, approaching this figure who's in solitude, and our magician too is kind of looking out from his position of solitude. So we feel like our knight is on a quest to seek assistance or advice from a powerful, isolated figure. And this is just a beautiful image in general as well. Here we have the Sun with the Keeper of Follow Through and Justice, and what an unusual Justice card as well, this weeping figure. Now we tend to read tarot left to right. Generally I do read tarot left to right, though I do sometimes wonder about it because I do also read in the other direction. And so I'm not completely certain which direction we should be moving in if our justice figure is transforming into the Sun. But because of the direction of the Keeper of Follow Through, we seem to be coming in this direction with something being brought to this figure who's suffering in this image. Some light, some healing energy being brought from this place where it's in abundance into this place where it's in scarcity. Here we have our Princess of Spring reading in the moonlight with the Keeper of Grace in between and the Princess of Summer. And there appears to be a thread connecting them, so their story seems to be connected in some way. Perhaps she's reading about it as she sits in the moonlight. Here we have the Four of Winter with the Keeper of Whimsy and the Tower. Rather challenging cards to put together, but I quite like how our Keeper of Whimsy is on the top of a wave which is about to crash and is completely fine with that as she drinks her cup of tea. Here's the High Priestess, the Keeper of the Dance, and the Chariot. And here we have the Ten of Winter, so swords, with the Keeper of Forgiveness and the Seven of Spring. Isn't that lovely? How we can connect them up with this moment of desolation being shifted through forgiveness, kind of lifting away some of that sorrow and allowing the spring flowers to bloom. I do rather like how these oracle cards kind of connect up the stories that you can see happening in the tarot cards. And there is a kind of poetic mood in both of the decks that allows them to go together, even if this deck is more fantastical and this one a little bit more historical. And here we have the 4 of Spring with the Keeper of Journeys and the 2 of Winter. They do seem to really transport you into a kind of magical landscape, which is just right for kind of cooler days and nights. So that's the Terra of Japanese Poetry and the Treekeepers Oracle. I have one last pairing for which I want to bring out the Thistledown deck again, and I'm pairing it with the Illuminated playing cards by Keegan. I don't think I've ever shown these on my channel. That's because they're not actually mine. I'm borrowing them from someone else. But I do think that they are beautiful, and I want to take a look at them in this combination. So in case you're not familiar with them, the Illuminated playing cards are 2 decks. One is sun-themed and one is moon-themed. So it's the same deck, but with different colorations. They are not exactly a tarot deck, they're a playing card deck. And what Keegan did is connect each of the tarot cards with the playing cards. So in some cases this is straightforward. We have here our King of Hearts is of course the King of Cups, and we have our 3 of Diamonds is the 3 of Pentacles, and you can see that the imagery incorporates the Waite-Smith style imagery. So this is the Moon deck and this is the Sun deck. I think in both of them the colours are quite autumnal because of this gold tones. And here we have our 6 of Diamonds, so 6 of Pentacles. You can see the food and the wealth being shared out. And in the 7 of Spades, so the 7 of Swords, we actually have incorporated the Chariot card as well. So what she did is, for the cards of the Major Arcana, she incorporated them into different cards in the playing cards deck, where she felt that there was some association between the sort of the standard card meaning, so the 7 of Swords, and the Major. So here we have the 2 of Diamonds, which is the 2 of Pentacles, between Memory, and the Ace of Diamonds, which she has interpreted as the World card. And here's our 2 of Cups with the Thistle, and the 2 of Swords, or Spades, has become the Hanged Man. So I like that association between the 2 of Swords and the Hanged Man. I think that works really, really well. And here we have 8 of Wands between Navigation and the 8 of Cups, which has become also the Moon card, which also works well as a kind of combining the idea of the 8 of Cups, where the traveller is walking away below the moon, and our Moon card. And also this goes quite nicely with our theme of navigation, journeying. The Ace of Wands normally being associated with movement. I'm not completely clear about that here, though perhaps it's connected. This is the wands appear to be forming a kind of nest. Okay, so then we have, so here we have the 8 of Hearts, the 8 of Cups. So once again, it's the Moon card, but now in the Moon deck with individuality, and the Queen of Wands, as our Moon card encourages us to take our individual journey to kind of fully realize the Queen of Wands potential. Here we have the 8 of Diamonds, so the 8 of Pentacles with darkness, and the 3 of Cups, the 3 of Hearts. And here's our 4 of Hearts, 4 of Cups with retreat, and then the Sun card in the 9 of Wands. To be completely honest, I think I would have preferred to see the Sun card or this image in the 8 of Wands, and this image in the 9 of Wands. It would have kind of made more sense to me. Since normally in the 9 of Wands we have a kind of palisade and somebody defending it, which seems to be what's expressed in this card. That's a little bit confusing to me, especially as this is then showing kind of energy and movement, which we would normally expect to see in the 8 of Wands. So that a little bit throws my reading. So here at the 7 of Diamonds, we have our Star card with Curiosity and the 4 of Wands. You can see that the cards are not all reversible, some of them are. And here's our Jack of Hearts with Ferocity and the 2 of Wands. I'm not sure how well these decks speak to one another, so I thought I would just try it out. But I do quite like having these decks together, so both a moon aspect and a sun aspect. And then there's also the possibility that you might draw the same card in different aspects. I don't necessarily see the moon as shadow, rather it brings a different quality of light. You can see here in the King of Clubs, so King of Wands, that he is also the Magician. I'd have to play around with the deck more to sort of figure out what I think of these different connections. Like I say, this is not my deck, so I haven't used it much, but I do think it's really fascinating and interesting. And I have used these decks as playing cards, so they work just great as playing cards. And the imagery is certainly very lovely indeed. Here we have a beautiful Ace of Swords, Ace of Spades, with our Knight card and the 3 of Pentacles, 3 of Diamonds, which is here reversed. And I like how our bird is looking towards the sword for some perhaps new ideas and fresh approaches to cut through some of the problems which may be blocking this particular project. Okay, so those are my pairs which I'm playing around with for the autumn season. I hope you enjoyed a little stroll through the artwork and that it gives you some cozy autumn vibes to look forward to as the seasons change. I'd love to know what decks you're using for the autumn. Let me know in the comments. Are there decks that you particularly enjoy at this time of year that you can suggest using to bring out some of the stories in these decks? I could have perhaps also brought out the Wildwood Tarot. I think that's quite an autumnal deck as well as the Druid Craft, but I'm not sure that I'm going to be turning to those decks in this current season, as I'm turning to other decks instead. And I'm going to share a little bit about my practice at the end of the month when I bring my September reflections video. So I hope to see you again soon in the next video, and I hope you're having a lovely season wherever you are. Bye.